In a significant escalation of hostilities, Ukraine launched what has been described as its largest drone attack on Russia in 3 years, coinciding with high-stakes peace talks taking place in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. The attack, executed on March 11, 2025, targeted Moscow and several other regions, resulting in the deaths of at least 3 individuals. This operation occurred mere hours before U.S. and Ukrainian officials convened to discuss a potential ceasefire amid ongoing tensions and military escalations on both sides. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who traveled to Saudi Arabia for discussions with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, was not present at the talks. Instead, Ukraine's delegation included Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha, Defense Minister Rustem Umerov, and other senior officials. The U.S. side is led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who has emphasized the need for Ukraine to consider concessions in order to facilitate a peace agreement with Russia. Rubio stated, "We want to see if the Ukrainians are interested not just in peace but in a realistic peace," indicating a potential pivot in U.S. support depending on Ukraine's willingness to negotiate. The drone strikes on Moscow were reportedly aimed at strategic targets, including an oil refinery essential for supplying fuel to the Russian military. Russian defense officials claim to have intercepted or destroyed 337 drones during the attack. In the aftermath, Moscow's residents expressed shock and disbelief at the scale of the Ukrainian operation, which has raised concerns about the broader implications for civilian safety and the potential escalation of conflict. Simultaneously, the battlefield situation remains dire, with Russian forces intensifying their operations in eastern Ukraine. Reports indicate that over the past week, Russia has conducted more than 2,100 aerial strikes, and recent advances have reportedly allowed them to reclaim territory in the Kursk region. The Institute for the Study of War noted that Russian forces are consolidating their gains and preparing for further offensives. Meanwhile, Ukrainian forces are countering these moves, with General Oleksandr Syrsky asserting that they are successfully reinforcing their positions along the international border and countering the threat of encirclement. The ongoing conflict has seen both sides suffering significant casualties and infrastructure damage. Last week alone, Russian airstrikes in Ukraine killed dozens, including civilians. The humanitarian toll continues to escalate, with millions displaced and critical facilities targeted by both sides. As the negotiations unfold in Jeddah, Ukraine is expected to propose a ceasefire covering missile strikes and combat operations in the Black Sea. Additionally, discussions may include a prisoner exchange and a potential resumption of U.S. military aid, which has recently faced uncertainties. The stakes are high as both nations grapple with the ramifications of the war and the potential for a negotiated peace. Observers note that the outcome of these talks could have profound implications for the future of U.S.-Ukrainian relations, the ongoing conflict, and the geopolitical landscape in Eastern Europe. With both sides seemingly entrenched in their positions, the path to a resolution remains fraught with challenges. As the situation develops, the international community watches closely, hoping for a diplomatic breakthrough that could bring an end to the protracted conflict. In a dramatic escalation of the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy visited Saudi Arabia on March 10, 2025, just hours before a significant drone attack targeted Moscow. This unprecedented assault, described as the largest of its kind in 3 years, coincided with high-stakes negotiations in Jeddah between Ukrainian and U.S. officials aimed at securing a potential ceasefire amid intensifying military activity on both sides. The drone attack on Moscow resulted in at least 3 fatalities and struck a multitude of strategic locations, including an oil refinery vital to the city's fuel supply. Eyewitness accounts from the suburbs revealed a sense of shock among residents, many of whom had previously felt insulated from the war's violence. "You understand that it is war, but you don't realize it properly. Now yes, it has come," said Svetlana, a resident of Ramenskoye, reflecting the sudden and jarring reality of the conflict's reach into everyday life. As the drone strikes unfolded, Ukrainian officials gathered in Jeddah, with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio leading the American delegation. The discussions were reported to have commenced very constructively. although there remains skepticism regarding the potential for lasting peace. Rubio indicated that Ukraine might need to consider territorial concessions as part of any agreement, a notion that has sparked considerable debate within the Ukrainian leadership. Zelensky's decision to engage in talks despite the recent drone attack underscores the delicate balance Kyiv faces as it navigates international diplomacy amidst relentless military pressure from Russian forces. Just days prior, the Institute for the Study of War noted that Russian troops had significantly ramped up their offensive operations in the Kursk region, capturing several small towns and intensifying aerial strikes across Ukraine, which claimed numerous civilian lives. The drone attack on Moscow was not merely a retaliatory measure, it served as a strategic signal from Ukraine aimed at demonstrating its capability to strike deep into Russian territory. "This is just a taste of what Russia has subjected its citizens to over the last 3 years," stated a Ukrainian military representative, emphasizing the psychological impact such operations are intended to have on Russian leadership and public sentiment. Ukrainian forces have faced mounting challenges on the battlefield, with reports indicating that thousands of Ukrainian troops risk encirclement by advancing Russian units. To counter these developments, Ukraine is reportedly bolstering its military capabilities, including plans to triple the supply of air defense systems from Germany and ramping up domestic drone production. The backdrop to these developments includes a complex geopolitical landscape, with the U.S. seeking to recalibrate its approach to support Ukraine while balancing domestic political pressures. Recent comments from influential figures, including former President Donald Trump, have raised questions about future military aid and the U.S.'s role in facilitating peace negotiations. As the Jeddah talks progress, Ukraine's delegation is expected to propose terms for a ceasefire that includes provisions for prisoner exchanges and security guarantees, while also advocating for the resumption of U.S. military aid. The outcome of these discussions could have profound implications not only for the war's trajectory but also for the broader geopolitical dynamics in Eastern Europe. Looking ahead, the interplay between military operations and diplomatic efforts remains critical in determining the future of Ukraine and its ongoing struggle against Russian aggression, with both sides entrenched in their positions. The coming days will be pivotal in shaping the potential for peace or further escalation. The international community watches closely, aware that any misstep could lead to devastating consequences for both nations and the region at large. In a significant diplomatic maneuver, a representative from former President Donald Trump's administration is set to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow following a U.S.-Ukraine summit in Saudi Arabia. This meeting, as reported by Axios on March 11, 2025, highlights the complex interplay of international relations and the ongoing tensions surrounding the Ukraine conflict, a topic that continues to resonate deeply in geopolitical discussions. The planned meeting comes at a time when Western officials increasingly believe that Putin is aware his terms regarding Ukraine will likely remain unmet. This acknowledgement of a stalemate reflects a broader understanding within the international community regarding Russia's position and the challenges it faces. The Kremlin's stance has evolved into a cautious optimism as officials warn against what they term Trump euphoria and the dangers of viewing the situation through rose-tinted spectacles. This sentiment was echoed in a recent report by Reuters, which emphasized the Kremlin's concerns about overly optimistic interpretations of Trump's potential influence on U.S.-Russia relations. As tensions simmer, various analysts note the implications of Trump's approach on international diplomacy. Some observers argue that Trump's unique rapport with Putin could pave the way for new dialogues and potential resolutions to the ongoing crisis. Trump's perspective might reintroduce a level of pragmatism that has been absent in U.S.-Russia discussions, suggested one expert, underscoring the potential for breakthrough negotiations. However, the path forward remains fraught with challenges. A recent opinion piece in the Washington Post outlined 5 common misconceptions regarding Trump's role in the Ukraine situation, suggesting that while some may view his administration as a potential stabilizing force, the reality is more nuanced. Critics argue that Trump's previous actions may have inadvertently exacerbated the conflict, complicating any future diplomatic efforts. as the international community watches closely. The outcomes of the proposed meeting in Moscow could set the stage for a new chapter in U.S.-Russia relations. It remains to be seen whether this engagement will lead to meaningful dialogue or if the entrenched positions on both sides will continue to hinder progress. The situation is dynamic and the implications of these developments will likely unfold in the coming months, shaping not only the trajectory of the Ukraine conflict but also the broader geopolitical landscape. In conclusion, as the world awaits the results of this pivotal meeting, the interplay of diplomacy, national interests, and historical legacies will undoubtedly play a crucial role in determining the future of U.S.-Russia relations and the ongoing strife in Ukraine. The coming weeks will be critical as stakeholders navigate these complex waters, and the potential for either reconciliation or escalation remains very much alive. In recent days, U.S.-Ukraine relations have been thrust into the spotlight following a contentious meeting between President Donald Trump, Vice President J.D. Vance, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on February 28. The fallout from this meeting has sparked a wave of criticism and reflection among American citizens, with many expressing deep disappointment over what they perceive as a betrayal of diplomatic norms and values. Mary Henderson Egan, a concerned citizen from Thiensville, articulated her shame in a letter to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel, stating, "Never have I been so ashamed to be an American." Egan's sentiments reflect a broader disillusionment with the current administration's approach to international relations, particularly in the context of Ukraine, a country facing aggressive military actions from Russia. She noted the historical significance of American support for Ukraine, especially given her family's military service, and questioned the integrity of elected officials who seem to abandon core American values. The tone of the Oval Office meeting, described as one filled with bullying, has led many to wonder about the implications of such behavior on international alliances. Reverend Alexander M. Jacobs expressed his disbelief, emphasizing that hospitality is a fundamental tenet of Christianity which he found lacking in the treatment of Zelenskyy. Jacobs voiced a desire for more diplomatic leadership in Washington to rectify the perceived wrongs. The sentiment was echoed by Charles Uphoff, who lamented the Republican Party's shift away from supporting traditional allies and expressed embarrassment over the U.S. siding with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Uphoff underscored the historical efforts made by the U.S. post-World War II to foster global stability and questioned the current administration's commitment to these ideals. As the diplomatic landscape evolves, Zelenskyy's recent visit to Saudi Arabia marks a critical juncture for Ukraine. In Jeddah, he met with Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman before engaging in talks with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. The Ukrainian delegation aims to propose a limited ceasefire and discuss the restoration of military aid and intelligence that had previously been paused under the Trump administration. Rubio, who has been vocal about the need for a renewed understanding between the U.S. and Ukraine, stated, "What we want to know is, are they interested in entering some sort of peace conversation?" His comments highlight the complexities involved in negotiating peace amid ongoing hostilities and the need for Ukraine to demonstrate a willingness to make difficult concessions. The implications of Zelenskyy's visit come at a time when the European Union is also recalibrating its stance on defense and security in response to the shifting U.S. policy. The EU has pledged to bolster its defenses and allocate substantial funds for security initiatives, reflecting a growing concern about the ramifications of U.S.-Russia relations on European stability. As discussions unfold in Saudi Arabia, the global community watches closely, hoping for a resolution that could pave the way for peace and restore Ukraine's sovereignty. The path ahead is fraught with challenges, but the recent exchanges underscore the importance of diplomacy and the need for a united front among allies. The reactions from American citizens like Egan, Jacobs, and Uphoff serve as a reminder of the values that underpin U.S. foreign policy and the expectations that come with them. Looking forward, the outcome of these talks may not only shape the future of Ukraine but also redefine America's role on the world stage.